So as we head into 2022, you may well be starting to think about what goals you want to set for the new year and the different things you want to achieve. In this video, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips on how to, which is harder than it sounds to actually say that, but my top tips to help you set goals well that make sure that actually next year you do achieve them. So in this video, we're going to have a little chat about my top tips for setting goals, because sometimes when we set goals, we don't really think about it, and it means we get to the end of the year and we haven't really moved towards them, or they weren't the right goals in the first place, or they're too vague and we're not quite sure if we've achieved them or not. So in this video, I'm just going to give you some of my top tips as we head to 2022 about how you can really effectively set goals and level up your career or whatever else you want to set goals around. So tip number one is to work out why you want to do it. And sometimes we set goals around things that we feel like we should do or have to do, or someone else has suggested that we do. So work out actually if this is something you really want to achieve, or this is something that someone else has kind of suggested to you, or something that you feel you have to. So working out what actually the goal is, and actually is it something I want to do and therefore you're going to have some more motivation and it's going to be more enjoyable for you, or is it a goal that you feel like you have to achieve, in which case it's going to be more difficult for you. So try and weed out at that stage, what do I really want to do and what are the things I think I should do. The second thing is about knowing when we've achieved it. So sometimes our goals can be quite vague, whether or not it's like be fitter, make some more money, but the problem is you're not quite sure when you've ever achieved it, because those are kind of very long-term goals and never ending. We could always be more fitter or be richer. So setting a really measurable goal so that you know when you've achieved it. So if it's around fitness, perhaps you'd want to run a 10K in a certain time. If it's around money, you want to be earning a certain amount by a certain point in the year. Or if it's perhaps some more development things, it's about I want to have spent 10 hours doing reading, or I want to have spent an hour a week for the next year working on a skill. But just make it more measurable so that you know actually what you're trying to achieve, rather than a kind of very vague, woolly goal of being fitter or being richer. The third thing to do is to write it down, or indeed use a vision board, but something concrete and tangible. So if we just have it in your head, it's often really difficult to be very specific around it, but also it makes it less permanent in some ways. So the act of physically writing it down or physically committing it to paper are really useful. Now, of course, if you're a digital person, then perhaps it's a Pinterest board or it's notes on your phone. So either digitalize it or write it down, just so that you've got something permanent that you can refer back to, but also make sure that when you are writing it down that you're making it specific. So you can use the SMART tool, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time-based, but just saying exactly what is my goal, when am I going to achieve it, how will I know I've achieved it, and what does success look like for that particular goal. The next thing to do is to break down the steps. So they say the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time, and it's the same for achieving your goals. So say you want your goal to be run a 10K in 45 minutes. So actually what you're going to need to do is train 3 times a week for the next 26 weeks, and you're going to need to do one training run which is a long run, one training run which is a fast one, and one which is an even pace, just as an example. But to achieve that goal, you need to break down those action steps. So you break it down week by week, task by task. What are the things that you need to do to move you closer to that goal? And then tip number 5 is, once you've done those things, you need to commit and diarise those things. So now you've got your action steps, you know you need to do 3 runs a week. What you need to do is schedule those in. And why that's important is it's like a commitment to yourself, just as you would schedule in work or school or whatever else you have to do in a week, but commit to yourself to moving those actions. If you wait till you feel like doing it, or kind of when you have time, it will quite easily drop off your list. So make sure that you schedule in regular time to work on your action steps that are ultimately going to help you achieve that goal. The next thing to do is to talk about your goal to friends or family. And of course, if it's a really personal goal or something you're not very comfortable sharing, it might be easier to do that with someone who's a really trusted friend, or you can get an accountability buddy, but someone who's going to hold you slightly accountable and ask you on a regular basis how you're getting along with that goal. And once you start to talk about it more and you've committed it to in a public arena, it's going to make you more likely to follow those action steps through, but also to occasionally get challenged if you're not doing what you said you wanted to. Obviously, life happens and things happen for a reason, so sometimes it's not always possible to do exactly everything we've said we're going to, but by having that accountability check-in from someone that you trust, it's just going to help you stay the course. Perhaps when times get a bit tough, it's dark, it's cold, it's wet, you don't want to do the thing that you said you were going to, but just having that accountability is really going to help you. The next thing you could do is consider getting a coach or some sort of professional help, depending on the type of goal you're going for. So obviously, for a lot of people going to the gym, they get a personal trainer. You can get career coaches, you can get coaches in most walks of life these days. So perhaps getting a coach who's someone who's not emotionally invested in it in the way that your friends and family are, but someone who perhaps has helped other people through this process, other challenges that they might have had. And ultimately, sometimes by committing money to something, it's going to make you much more likely to show up and do the work. So think about whether or not, in your case, for your particular goal, working with a coach is going to be helpful. The next thing, and this is particularly kind of when you're like further in, so initially, often when we're working on goals or we've set up those action steps, we've got lots of enthusiasm and motivation, and that kind of takes us through. But at some point that will inevitably wane and real life will kick in. So focus on being consistent with working on your goals. Don't focus necessarily on being perfect, but just focus on showing up every week, looking at what you're trying to achieve, and then making sure that you are using all those other tips, so scheduling it in, accountability. So just work on the focus of being consistent rather than like being perfect when you're trying to achieve those action steps. The next thing to do is on a regular basis, and depending on your goal, you might want to do this weekly or monthly, but regularly check in and kind of review your progress. So see how far you've got when completing those action steps, how much closer you are to your goal. And that's good for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's going to make you feel positive about how far you've come. Often, and I'm really bad at this, I'll focus on all the things that are still yet to do rather than the things I have actually accomplished. So I never quite take stock and just go, actually, it's okay because I've already achieved like 50% of what I wanted to do. So sometimes we can beat ourselves up and think, oh, we've still got so far to go, and we don't really think about how far we've come from. So by regularly reviewing it, and then also if you, during that regular review, kind of realise it's not going quite the way you wanted it to or quite the way you expected it to, something, a curveball's come in or something that happened, then you can look to adjust your goal or adjust your action steps. So if the goal's no longer right, it's either kind of not as important to you anymore, or life has moved on, or maybe say you've achieved that goal already and you want to create a stretch goal, or that the action steps aren't taking you closer as you wanted to. But just that regular review is going to help you check in, think about where you are, think about how far you've come, think about what you've still got left to do, and then work out if the action steps are still the right things to take you there, or if you need to think about slightly changing those, or ultimately the end goal. And finally, share your successes. People will be glad that you've made it happen, and people will be positive for you that you have achieved a goal. So quite often we are very good at sharing our failures or saying when we failed to do something, but actually celebrating our successes kind of goes against our slightly kind of British, like, don't show off and don't like draw attention to yourself, but be proud of your successes and share them in a relevant forum. So, whether or not that's LinkedIn, Instagram, like friends and family. Like I went to a friend's party the other week who she'd thrown it for like completing her PhD. So just think about some sort of celebration of success, a nice meal, a little treat to yourself, something that's going to help you recognise that you did actually achieve your goal, and you'll be proud of yourself, but also is that kind of positive reinforcement for when you do things and you do the hard work, positive elements come from it. So those are my top 10 tips on how to set goals and actions that are actually going to take you forward in 2022. I'd love to hear what you're currently working on or what goals you'd like to achieve in the next year. So please leave a comment below, and I will definitely come back to you. On this channel, we're talking about things that are going to help you give more confidence in your career, and help share the tips, tricks and hacks to help you navigate life's challenges. So love it if you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.